Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to Carnivore RX Lifestyle. I am Cristie, your host, and today I am joined by Chris Brandlin, better known to many as the Carnivore Lawyer. I know that's how I first got to know him. Chris's own health transformation led him to rethink everything he thought he knew about nutrition, healthcare, and the role of metabolic health plays in our lives. So today we're going to explore how that journey has shaped not only his personal mission, but also his work as an attorney and his decision to run for public office in Nevada. So, whether you're interested in metabolic health, healthcare reform, or the power of nutrition to change lives, I think you'll find this conversation both thought-provoking and inspiring. Let's jump in. Welcome, Chris, to the show.
Oh, Cristie, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So, a lot of people, like I said, know you as the Carnivore Lawyer and someone that's running for Nevada State Assembly, but I want to start before that.
Sure.
What was life like for you before Carnivore? What was happening with your health, and how bad did things get?
Well, as you may know, I actually came from the health and fitness industry before practicing law. I was a very competitive wrestler during high school, and then in college, just say I kind of let loose. I was actually a frat president. You know, you're not supposed to call it a fraternity president, but I was actually a fitness trainer. I was actually a fitness trainer at 24 Hour Fitness, and then I became a fitness manager. But I was kind of celebrating a little bit too much. We'll call it celebrating. But then like I decided to go to law school to prove my father wrong. So I kind of got my act together. And then during law school, that's actually where I went keto. So in law school, I actually wanted to get in the best shape of my life just because I stopped partying, stopped drinking, stopped smoking. And I actually worked with an all-natural bodybuilding coach who was a registered dietitian. And he was actually kind of the one that kind of introduced me to the ketogenic diet. So what I did is I actually went into carb cycling. Basically, it was actually just, you know, meat and vegetables and some good fats, and then carbohydrates every 3 days, like sweet potatoes. I did that like religiously. Like, I remember I cut from, I was a 205-pound power lifter because I was kind of like, I was never really a heavier fat guy, but I was a bulkier guy because I was eating 7,000 calories a day and I was just lifting. So what I actually did is I actually cut from 205 to 155, and I stayed there. And I did that for like 2.5 years just because I wanted to stay focused. And then that's where I got into the championship. So I was Mr. Los Angeles Natural Bodybuilding Champion in 2010, also Mr. Arizona Natural Champion 2010, and I was also Mr. Southern California Naturals 2010. That was in La Jolla. I did that during like my last year of law school. Was very trained. But anyway, so passed the bar, practicing law, 5 years down the road, and then all of a sudden I started feeling sick. And for me, this was kind of like new because I never went to doctors for not feeling well. And I was kind of embarrassed. And this, I just turned 30. And before, I always go to doctors for broken bones in the ER because I was an adrenaline junkie, and I still am an adrenaline junkie, if you probably noticed that. So I have plenty of broken bones and stitches and all that. I got plenty of scars on my body. So I was kind of embarrassed that I had to go to the doctors because was not feeling well. I was doing some traveling because the law practice was doing a lot of. I was actually traveling for work too for different cases, and then but the problem is the doctor didn't really do any testing, and he didn't really look at me too. He's like, I was like, you know what? I'm having so many problems. I used to wake up early in the morning, and then all of a sudden, I can't wake up that well. I'm in constant pain, like kind of like I call it the autoimmune umbrella, where like I'm having pain from like the head to toe, like it's fibromyalgia, skin issues like eczema, like, and also it wasn't really leaky gut. I wasn't having gut pain. I was having gut discomfort. And then just chronic fatigue, like everything was like, what the heck has happened to me? Like overnight, is this what 30 turns like? I wasn't expecting that much. But the doctor didn't really do any kind of extensive testing. So he's like, hey, you probably got some kind of like minor infection. This is what we're going to do. I'm going to give you some medications. But what he did is he kind of gave me like a combination of the pharmaceutical cocktail from hell. So it was laxatives, corticosteroids, and antibiotics, and he had me rotate them religiously. And then he actually referred me to other doctors that did the same thing. So it went from gut discomfort to gut pain because that pharmaceutical cocktail from hell. actually started like burning up my intestines. And originally I was just having a little bit of bloating, certain vegetables, the FODMAPs and all this other thing. It started turning into blood, like in the stool. So I was like, wow, I'm bleeding from my intestines. What the hell is going on with me? So I kept getting worse, but he's like, oh, we'll rotate it, we'll switch to something else. And it got worse. And I did that for 14 months from like 2016 to 2017. And then early 2017, they're like, all right, I was like, hey, I'm bleeding. Like I'm afraid to eat because I'm bleeding from my intestines. I lost so much weight. What is going on with me? He's like, all right. They did like all these scans, like, all right, you're most likely bleeding from your intestines, and they saw a piece of my intestine, your sigmoid colon, which is almost to the end. Okay, so it goes, ascending, transverse, and then it goes descending, and it goes sigmoid, and then it goes all to the rectum. Right? The sigmoid got very inflamed, and he said, we're going to refer you to a colorectal surgeon. That's what they did. But the colorectal surgeon just promised, hey, it's all right. We'll just remove this piece about 6 inches. It's going to be in and out. Laparoscopic, minimally invasive. You'll be out in like 1 or 2 days. You won't even notice a thing. And I'm very confident that once we remove the 6 inches, you're going to feel so much better. And so when you're in pain, you're very desperate and you're very gullible. And a lot of people can probably, reciprocate this too, is that, they've been in that situation. That's why I kind of really admire the pharmaceutical, or sort of the carnivores got off the pharmaceuticals, is because a lot of these carnivores went down maybe not the same exact path, but a very similar path. They listened to conventional medicine and they got worse. So for me, I was like, you know what? I'm so desperate. I put off my dating life, my social life. I remember I even broke up with a girl at the time that I was dating because she called me a burden. She's like, I can't travel with you. You're all sick. Like, unfortunately, you kind of deal with those kind of girls from California. No offense, Cristie.
I
But
know.
anyways, so I was like, all right, let's just do the surgery. Let's get it over with. I need to get my life back. And so that's where actually even went worse, because they did the surgery first thing in the morning from UCI, UC Irvine. It's actually in Orange County. First thing in the morning, and I guess they didn't give me the proper anesthesia. I actually woke up while they were sewing up my intestine. Actually, before they were sewn up, they already had my intestines cut open. I woke up. So I woke up in extreme pain because the anesthesia wore off, and I just started screaming, and then they had problems putting me back to sleep. So I was just screaming for like 5 to 10 minutes, and they couldn't find so what they did is they overdrugged me on tramadol and morphine, a bunch of other crap to just kind of sedate me. And then I was overdrugged in the hospital for 1 or 2 days. I don't even remember much. I remember they had me trying to do a little bit of walking, but I just felt like a zombie. And then all of a sudden hey, we're going to be releasing you in a couple hours. I'm like, wait, I'm not even sure if I took a crap yet. Shouldn't I make sure this thing's working before you release me? They released me, and I had more complications, and I ended up developing a humongous infection. Do you remember, I'm not sure if I just turned 41, Cristie, but do you remember the movie The Aliens from the original from the 80s with Sigourney Weaver, where the aliens popping out of the guy's stomach and just starts rolling like a bull bush? Imagine that 2 inches below your belly button. That's what actually happened, because that was the main incision area. It was 2 inches below the belly button, and it started getting bigger. And I remember one of the physician's assistants said, hey, it's just a hematoma. Don't worry about it. It'll go away. And then all of a sudden it grew to the size of a grapefruit. I'm like, oh my God, this is like the movie The Alien. I got to cut. It was so painful. So I took some photos and sent it to the surgeon. He's like, get into the ER ASAP. So they had to rush basically to cut me open, and no time for anesthesia. They just gave me some lidocaine injections, and they sliced it right open in front of me, drained out all the infections, and I was awake the whole effing time. And I just remember that it was almost just as painful as waking up while they're cutting open my intestines. And I was just biting my tongue to not scream and trying to stay still to make sure they didn't screw up. And I was bleeding from my mouth. And then they released me, and I was trying, and they're like, oh yeah, we're not going to sew it up because the infection came from the inside. So just kind of change the gauze. So I was changing gauze in this humongous wound 2 inches below my belly button. And then guess what? 2 weeks later, same thing happens. I had to go back to the ER, and they had to cut me right back open. The same kind of repeated kind of incident. And I just pain again. And then I was trying to change the gauze. It was barely healing, but I was just struggling. And I just remember that I went, sometimes it got a little better and then it was getting worse. And then it did that for the next couple of months. This is going into the end of 2017. And then finally, I told the doctor, I was like, the surgeon, I'm like, I regret all this. I regret ever taking any medications. I regret the surgery. You made my life completely worse. You ruined my life. I used to be in magazines and now like I can't even function. I'm like going back and forth like a lab rat to the hospital. And this is what he told me. He's like, if you're still having problems, we might as well just remove the rest of your intestines. And that is where I woke the F up and knew that conventional medicine is going down a downward spiral. So what I did is I said, hey, I gave him the middle finger, and just when it went off on him, I left the hospital. I'm like, I'm never going back. I'm going to fix this myself. So I did some extensive blood work. I started finding these functional doctors, and they found the Lyme disease and co-infections. And that was actually Holtorf Medical Group back in like 2017. And actually now I'm their attorney because I love the fact that but I was still having problems, even though I was doing ozone therapy and, keeping like, the Lyme and kind of a remission. I was like, I got to heal this gut. So what I ended up doing is I was like, just gonna fast. I've done a couple days before, but I wanted to do an extended fast. I was already kind of skinny at that time, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna do 10 days. I was kind of looking up all these testimonials we've seen on YouTube, and so I decided to do a 10-day fast, and I was looking into what to refeed. And that is where I looked into the GAPS diet. Have you ever the gut psychology syndrome diet? I think
I've heard of it.
a lot of the carnivores kind of find that and then go into further elimination, go carnivore. I had a similar background. So the GAPS diet by Dr. Natasha McCampbell McBride is like from like the 80s and 90s. It's talking about doing like, just starting off with an elimination diet, but started off with animal products first and then introducing foods. But the main healing element is bone broth. So, anyways, and look, I actually became a dietetic technician, which is similar to a registered dietitian, like right before the surgery. So I already knew that what I was taught was not, because they demonized me for a lot of like, and especially if you're having inflammatory bowel disease, like most of the dietetic textbooks try to tell you to reduce your meat consumption. It's so stupid. So, anyways, I was like, you know what? This GAPS diet, this thing's promising. I saw these testimonials. So, this is what I'm gonna do. I kind of had the histamine issues from the Lyme, so I'm the bone broth. I got to be careful. So let me just do meat. And so that was the goal. So I did 10 days on so right when I started refeeding, I refed on a slow roasted steak because I wanted to make it very tender. And it was amazing because I felt so much better after that. And I did that like for the next week, and my gut completely healed. And I finally had a normal bowel movement. It was amazing. I was like crying out of joy. So then, but when I started introducing other foods, like you do in the GAPS diet, I was still having problems. Like, what the hell? So I hate most attorneys. I think I made this very public. I hate most attorneys. I definitely hate a lot of politicians. I'm not going to make any friends in politics. I can guarantee that. But anyways, so most of my friends, like my best friend, was a former trainer with me at 24 Hour Fitness, still to this day. I was like, Brian, like, he's like, yeah, you're doing it. You seem like you're doing better. I was like, yeah, but it's the craziest thing. I can only eat meat. This is like 2018. I was like, can I just eat meat for the rest of my life? I'm happy now, but I didn't have to go to surgery. I avoided a colostomy bag. That was a very big concern. He's like, yeah, there's actually a diet like that. Like there's like a community. I think it's called like the carnivore diet. That's where I found Michaela Peterson. Like I think it was like June of 2018, right before my like 33rd birthday. I actually did a telephone conversation with her because I reached out to her. She actually called me her cell. It's like a 30-minute consult about, don't cook with any kind of oils besides tallow. And, even though you're a personal trainer and even though you're a dietetic technician, I never even heard of tallow. I was like, what the hell is freaking tallow? So I had to find it like, certain health food stores.
Yeah.
And then I started ordering online, and then I stopped using kind of like any oils, and that was better. And then I wanted to get more detail, like, how many organs to eat, all that. You want to get like every particular, and maybe I'm like an over analytical thinker that I was like, all right, I want to know everything about this. Like if I want to survive this, I want to do this for the rest of my life because I want to go back into fitness. So I Skyped with Dr. Baker. I think it was like September 2018. got some more information. This is before he became very popular too. And then I was like, I found this group called the Paleo Medicina Group. It was based out of Budapest, Hungary, run by Dr. Sophia Clemens. And I was like, man, they're like, the reason why I admire them, because they actually had clinical trials to show that they put so many kind of conditions, and even like a stage 4 colon cancer, in remission with a complete ketogenic animal-based diet. So the PKD diet. So I Skyped with them, the friendliest people ever, and I was amazed on how well she could speak English. So I decided that they said, hey, if you want to stay with us, you can stay with us. So I was actually working the whole time after the surgery. So I decided to go over there Thanksgiving Day of 2018, because I was still kind of introducing other foods. I wasn't completely carnivore. I was trying some other things, still taking some vitamins and stuff like that. So when I went over there, that is where everything got even better, because this is what she told me. She's like, I'm like, hey, I'm still taking some multivitamins. I'm taking some vitamin C and all this other stuff. I'm trying to keep my immune system. And she said, hey, the only thing you're allowed to eat, meat, fat from the meat, salt, and water. Nothing else. No vitamins. And I was so amazed that I was like, all right, you know what? Let's go for it. I did 10 days in Budapest, Hungary. That was where I felt like the true healing. So when I came back to the United States, even as practicing law for about 7 years, that was my focus, is coming back to health. I think that was kind of God's calling to come back to health. So I started promoting, like, hey, let's, everybody been telling me that meat is like, the worst thing you could have for inflammatory disease. It saved my life. I would probably wear a colostomy bag if it wasn't for meat. And I actually try to get my master's in dietetics at USC, as they have a dietetics and gerontology kind of like health span program. And they're amazed by my portfolio. Hey, you're licensed in more than one state. You get you got a dietetic technician. You're a licensed attorney. Why are you coming back to like a master's in dietetics? I'm like, I want to flip the food pyramid upside down. I literally told them that. And you know what they said? We don't care of your background. You are not aligned with our purpose here. So that kind of tells you a lot about the typical dietetic program. So I got my MBA, but what made me come to Congress with that last final straw? The vaccine mandates. So the vaccine mandates 2020, 2021, they had them all the different states. And you remember this, Cristie. In California, it was mainly August of 2021. I started speaking against that, and I was mainly on LinkedIn since 2011. So I was speaking publicly, like really animated, because yes, I have a bias against the pharmaceuticals. Okay. It almost ended my life, and it's ended a lot of my friends' lives too. So I spoke out publicly, and what I started doing is I started using all the clinical research, peer-reviewed journals showing all the harms of the vaccines, and I started exposing, why are we listening to Bill Gates? Why is he the new health guru of the United States? I'm like, you could see the agenda behind it. And what happened is the other attorneys reported me to the California State Bar for speaking out, and I had to dismiss the complaints. And after I dismissed the complaints, of course, there's a lot of reasons why I don't like most attorneys, but that's one of them. I decided to get my PhD in public health, or public policy focused on public health. I went through the program, and I finished my dissertation, and my dissertation was actually on the vaccine mandates. It was mainly on the ethical issues, but I discussed the health consequences too, and my dissertation got approved, and that's what made me Dr. Brandlin. So I always tell people I'm a research doctor, not a medical doctor. I don't prescribe the 30 leading cause of death. I expose the BS. But yes, and that's where I met with Team Kennedy in DC of last year of inauguration. And they knew I was a dual resident, and they said, don't waste your time with California election fraud. You already just saw that in the recent race, but I'm glad it is. So I basically just focused on Nevada ever since then. And that's why it started off as Brandlin for Congress, but then I switched it to Brandlin for Nevada, because the state legislature is actually where you can make the most changes at health. Health is a state power, not a federal power. HHS sets the guidelines, 10th Amendment to the Constitution, 1791. And that's why I'm here today. And that's why it is Brandlin for the Nevada. And that is why I have coined Make Nevada Healthy Again.
That's awesome. So yeah, that kind of leads right into my next question, which is, today you are running for the Nevada Assembly. So at what point did your personal health journey become something bigger than your own story. Like, that's great. You healed yourself. Some of us do things like me, like start a YouTube channel to let people
Yeah.
know, some people just, they're happy with their own, health transformation that they have, and they might just influence their personal bubble around them. But you are taking this to the much, broader space of politics. So at what point did that personal journey that you took become something bigger? When did you decide that you wanted to fight publicly for these issues?
Because I saw that there was a complete agenda that was going on, but it's the biggest problem is you have some large control over not only of our future doctors, but all politics. And this is where I kind of showed a reel. I'm not sure if you saw that. And this is why I have some people from my own party that do not like me, because I'm going to take away funds from their back pockets, because I don't believe the pharmaceutical industry should have so much control over public policy. And there's a reason why meat is being demonized. So let me ask you a question, Cristie, and everybody else. I will address your questions. Is that if people got healthier by kind of just switching over to a pure natural diet, with even if it wasn't just carnivore, let's just say if it's just one cleaning ingredient with real food, and they went back to a more active lifestyle and they didn't take any medications, do you think big pharma would ever profit? No, they would go bankrupt. And I always tell people the money is not where the person is healthy. The money is not where the person is dead. It's right in the middle where they're chronically sick and they are a repeat customer, not patient, a customer for the pharmaceutical industry for the rest of their lives. So the pharmaceutical industry, the wealthiest industry in the world, funds over 70% of all politicians. There's a reason why they can influence what goes on. There's a reason why only 8 out of all 50 states have banned lab grown meat. Why are we permitting this? So why are we kind of let's just start off with just basic medications or any kind of type vaccines. Cristie, if I just turned 41, I'm not sure if you're around my kind of like ballpark area of the age, but in the 80s, you looked at the amount of vaccines they gave to just infants, and it's like quadrupled or something since then. And the biggest problem is what I discovered when I was actually doing my dissertation and studying of what the medical curriculum is, all the most prestigious medical institutions around the world. It's not diet. Most of their curriculum is pharmacology. There's a reason why. Why does the average doctor at the most prestigious medical institution only spend 19.6 hours on nutrition education in their entire medical career? And that's a long time, because you have to discuss their residency. That's part of their kind of education too. And the reason is because the biggest donors of all the medical institutions in the entire country is pharmaceutical companies. Pfizer is one of the biggest. So they control our future doctors. I don't think doctors are sinister. I truly believe most, if not all, I'll say most doctors have true good intentions to help others. I don't think doctors are uneducated. I think they're miseducated. I don't think they're uninformed. I think they're misinformed. It's the agenda they set. And then actually when everybody asks me, "Oh, he's just a doctor basher because he's biased because he got screwed up by one doctor." I'm like, "No. I actually admire the doctors, and my favorite doctors are the ketogenic and the carnivore doctors, the ones who looked outside the box. They knew that they were kind of fed the improper agenda, kind of like that was kind of, let's say, a propaganda by the pharmaceutical industry. They're kind of ingrained that, but they looked outside the box and they wanted to see their patients actually get better rather than being a repeat customer for a new medication on a prescription pad every week. Like Dr. Shafee, when I connected with him in 2022, I think that's where I started doing legal work for him. I was like, "Hey, I want to help you." And this is what I do for the entire carnivore community. It's like, I will do pro bono work. I'm not going to charge any for my time, because I want to kind of give back, because I actually truly believe most attorneys are going to burn in hell. My father and my uncles hate that because they're attorneys and judges. But I actually want to cut less time in purgatory so I can come back to heaven the right way. I want to serve the people. And I want to see if there's anybody that's going to be speaking out, because there's a reason why some people from my own party really don't like me. I always tell people it's because they get a lot of their funding from these political action committees who are getting all their money funneled through Pfizer, and that is how they set the agenda for not only our health, but the most important, our younger generation. Our younger generation is so sick, and those are our future leaders. So people need to focus on the future, not just the present.
Yeah, I'm a teacher. I don't know if you know that, but I do teach fifth grade here in Southern California. So when you say the younger generation, like I'm the boots on the ground with that generation, and I've been doing that. I'm going into my 27th year. I can tell you 100% that the kids over my 26, almost 27-year career have gotten nothing but sicker, more overweight, and more dependent on even medications. That includes everything from metabolic health to mental health. And I'm not a healthcare practitioner or a doctor, not even a research doctor like you, but I have two eyes. And, you know, with my own awakening of, you know, metabolic health and things like that, I can look at them and be like, wow, we used to have one or two maybe a little overweight kids when I first started in a class, and now it's well over half my class. You know, I hear more and more out of their own mouths, like out of the kids' mouths. They're 10 years old telling me about their anxiety, things like that I never used to hear. Right. And then their ability to concentrate, to, you know, do their schoolwork, to even just write a paragraph.
Yeah, no, and that's why I try to tell people, and this is how I improved my cognition, and this is how I got licensed in 4 different states and got the PhD, and is actually still pretty functioning very well as a kind of like one of the youngest candidates, is because whatever you eat affects you head to toe. You're wondering why all these kids are having mental health and psychological problems. Like, look at the crap they're eating, and look at all the medications they're taking. They're lab rats, and they're eating food with probably like every type of food they have is a minimum of like 30 to 40 ingredients. Why is that such a problem? Why is it so hard to find one effing food with one ingredient? It doesn't matter if it's meat or if it's produce. And now you're seeing that, hey, you kind of have to go to carnivore. Some situations as a elimination. When you're very inflamed, I think the carnivore diet is almost like a mandatory for a lot of situations. And that's why I tell people that, oh, he's just a carnivore doctor. He's trying to get the entire Republic of Nevada to eat only meat. I'm like, no, I don't like never expecting everybody to eat just meat. And I don't think it's mandatory for a lot of situations. I want people to just eat real food with one ingredient. Why is that such a problem? Why do they have to be on 20 or 30 different medications? And why do you have to have processed food? Why are you trying to like put lab grown meat in crickets like in the food without disclosing it? Because certain states, Cristie, I'm not sure if you know, you don't have to disclose whether there is lab grown meat and like cultured meat and a cricket protein inside of a meat. So what they're doing is, instead of like just having a pure steak, they actually are kind of inserting and kind of like amplifying the steak with lab grown meat and crickets to basically kind of like increase some of the revenue. But what the hell? You haven't seen all this carcinogenic crap like put it into the lab grown meat. And this is where I think there needs to be more transparency. And when people open up and when people expose, you can see why I have a target on my back and where I get a lot of questionable calls and with a blocked number. They don't even have the balls to fucking call me from an actual number and some random messages. So it's okay. I'd rather just do the extra work, because my hope is I want to have a happy afterlife. I'm not expecting to die happy. I want to die satisfied. So I want to die that knowing that I actually did something for society, because most people are really focusing on the future. And although I'm not married, and although I don't have a wife and kids, and I don't have kids to care for, I have nieces and nephews, and that is my concern. And I know I give you a lot of respect for being in the educational realm, kind of focus on the younger future, because there's not too many people focusing on the younger kids. And right now they're so sick, and the childhood obesity epidemic is getting worse every year. And it got worse ever since the 80s, after the stupid low-fat craze kind of went in. So people need to wake up. And I should tell you that my brother is actually, even though he's the opposite political party, you can almost say he's like the opposite of me in so many different ways, but he actually appreciates me coming back to like public health. Because he's like, look, I can't really consider you like a MAGA Republican when you're talking about health, because health is a bipartisan topic. It's a bipartisan issue. It requires both parties, whether you like it or not, to come together, to collaborate, and think of the best option for the future of the American public, not these stupid special interest groups that are trying to profit off of this. So this is where we have to focus on the people more than the people. And this is why I kind of got a middle finger from certain kind of PACs, because they're like, you can't be kind of talking crap about the pharmaceutical owners because we get our money. I'm like, I don't give a crap. So I'd rather work my ass off and fund my own campaign. But yes, there's a lot of reasons why I'm here today.
Yeah, that thing you said about your brother being the opposite party, like there's a lot of teachers from both parties. Like I know teachers from both parties, and all the teachers, no matter what their party, talk about the food that is served in the cafeteria,
Yeah.
for breakfast and lunch here, and how terrible it is for the kids, right? No matter their party affiliation. So I 100% agree with you that we've got to work together, on fixing some of these issues. So when most politicians, and I'm not big into politics.
Good for you.
Normally, but I do, but I do hear them talking about healthcare costs, like things like healthcare costs. But you talk about metabolic health. So why do you think that belongs in the legislative conversation?
Well, because I think it's going to control some of the agenda that they're setting forth, and I think we should be putting a lot of limitations on some of these companies, not only funding the pharmaceutical companies, but also funding their medical curriculum for all the hospitals. I think the biggest focus is we need to see an expansion of more doctors talking about metabolic health. And Bobby Kennedy, I call him Bobby Kennedy, everybody calls him RFK, but when I met him, it was always Bobby. That's what he's focusing on, is like, hey, let's eliminate or reduce the amount of advertising for pharmaceutical companies, because the pharmaceutical companies have like the best marketing team you could possibly imagine with all that money. So everybody's like, oh, it's advertising. I'm like, no, it's manipulation. That's what you're doing. You're seeing like these commercials with people like struggling with a bad like health, and all of a sudden they show the medication, they show them big and smiling. And you probably see this, Cristie, that when they read off the side effects of the medication, they like speak 300 words per minute. And I can speak very fast too, because I remember the court reporter telling me to slow down all the time. She's like, you're 250 words per minute. You could see how fast they speak when they kind of ran off all those side effects where people will not notice. And all they're doing is the guy is smiling when like on the, like, after they show the medication, when they're talking about the side effects. So the people are not like listening or like focused on the side, like, oh my God, I want to be like that. I'm struggling. So we have to control that. But I think the biggest focus is like changing the school lunch programs, because that's something that hasn't been done for a lot of the 50 states. And this is why I try to emphasize for a lot of people that everybody thinks that Bobby Kennedy is going to save the day. He can only do so much, and he doesn't have that much power right now. Pharmaceutical companies still like can have control over that everything. I was hoping Trump can probably give a middle finger to Bill Gates, and all of a sudden he's having dinner with him. I was like, come on. So as a Republican, I can agree with most of the kind of policies, but for those, I have to put my foot down. And this is why I'm also. I'm not sure if you saw my podcast with Casey Parker for the American Rancher Alliance. So there's one thing that really I would always have a disagreement with Trump, even as a Republican, that if you say America first, it's got to be America first across the board. So when you're trying to source the meat, because as you may know, Cristie, we're having the highest rates of bankruptcy filings by all the American farmers across the country. And those are the true patriots they're the true backbone of this country, because they put real food on our plates. So when they're going bankrupt, I see that as a humongous problem. So what is it? Hey, let's source our beef from Argentina. No. And this is actually where all the American farmers actually finally kind of like put their foot down with Trump, because you're going to be putting us out of business. Let's talk about more subsidies and ways we can kind of like reduce the production costs. So I became the attorney for the American Ranch Alliance. I don't charge them a thing, because I try to promote them, because they are building a coalition to keep all the American farmers alive. So I actually encourage everybody. I'm not going to ask you for a donation for me. I'm going to say, why don't you donate to the American Rancher Alliance? I'd actually rather do something that's good, because we need support for the American farmers. There is an actual protocol that I've kind of been working on to make meat affordable again. But it's going to require a lot of the production costs. But we need more people to buy directly from the farmers. You have no idea what happens from the farm to the table in between the wholesaler and everything else like that, because a lot of the beef that actually have the USDA label, it's not coming from the United States. It's like some crap meat coming from like different Southern American countries. So we think we need a lot more support. So that's is why I say, like, support the farmers. So there's a lot of things we need to do, not only for the American public, but of course the kids. I think there needs to be a lot more transparency in what's actually going in your kids' foods.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I have bought a half beef before. I'm considering buying another one in November from my local FFA program. So the high school students that raise things like beef and pigs, and because they're future farmers of America, and they sell off those animals, and the cows happen in November. So I'm currently looking into that. And I think that's a great choice for people.
And there is one more point I'll make too.
Sure.
One thing that has become more popular that I'm really appreciating, so basically like the corn industry, if you're thinking of like, if it's a corn fed or soy fed, kind of like, I always tell people like, carnivore, it's a kind of a broad term, whether you're a strict lion or whether you're kind of moderate carnivore or a ketovore. But a lot of people are like, hey, if I want to get like a quality, one of the reasons why I usually don't tolerate pork, but when I was in Budapest, I felt amazing on pork. There's a reason why. You know what the reason is?
Has to do with what that pig is fed, I believe. So those pasture-raised pigs, that when I buy pork, I buy pasture-raised pork.
Well, it's not just pasture-raised, but there's a reason, okay?
Okay.
So cows have a 4-chamber stomach system, okay?
Yeah.
So poultry and pigs, they're just like you and I, Cristie. They got a monogastric stomach system. They got a single chamber, so they cannot break down grains like cows can. Cows can do it a lot. That's why a grain-fed cow is not so inflammatory, and the omega-3 to 6 ratio is not substantial compared to a grass-fed. A lot of people don't realize, but when you get a corn-fed or a soy-fed chicken or pork, it's the omega-3 to 6 ratio is horrible. It's a lot of omega-6s because they can't process. So there are more farmers that I try to promote, and you probably see it on some of my kind of clips, to buy corn-free and soy-free poultry or pork. And there's a lot more farms that are doing that. So if you are going to support the American farmers, do that, especially because the same board of directors for Pfizer, Moderna, and all that have the same board of directors for all the big corporations that are kind of running these kind of like corn production, because corn is like the most industrialized and most profitable crop.
Yeah.
Person.
So unfortunately, you got to have some partnerships in this, Dr. Chris. So when you talk with other lawmakers about nutrition and addressing the root causes of chronic disease, what kind of reactions do you get? Like, are people becoming more open to these?
There are. I shouldn't bash all politicians, because the majority of them are, and I think they saw that once I won the primary election that I'm taking it extra serious, and I think they were surprised that they actually saw a political candidate going 5 to 7 hours a day in Las Vegas in the triple-digit heat from like May all the way through early June for the last 6 weeks. I met with every voter, so it's probably better that I don't have a wife and kid, because that'd be a horrible husband and father that's never home. So I spent like even working a full time running my own practice, and I have offices in Fort, but I mainly stay in Vegas. Something I'm trying to do is get more out to the community, because those are going to be my voters. I always tell people, I'm like, even though I support the GOP for a lot of different reasons, I'm like, look, you're not going to help me win the campaign. I need to get the support from my constituents, the people. I need to listen to them. I can't be listening to everybody up in Carson City, which is the state capital, as you may know. I still go up to Carson City quite often, but my focus is on people, and that is why you probably just saw, if you've been watching my socials today, like that's why I was promoting a wellness clinic that just opened up right across my office. I'm like, hyperbaric oxygen therapy is something else that healed me. So this is why I tell people, minimally invasive alternative medicine is the best thing you can do. I love adjuncts. Carnivore or a ketogenic diet is kind of like a main foundation, because the diet controls pretty much almost all, if not like most of your health, right? But if anything, I always like to do adjuncts because look, I'm just turned 41 and I'm trying to go back into being the best athlete of my life. And even though I think I can do it, like my recovery sucks after 40, man. And this is what my advice is. Sometimes even if I have a couple of drinks, so I haven't had any sugar or sweets, but occasionally I'll have a little bit of alcohol. But it's just straight tequila. That's my only thing. If I do a filet mignon at dinner at like a very special evening or like an event, I'll have a Patron. But the recovery is slow, and the recovery is slow for all of us when we get over the age of 40. So what I recommend is oxygen-based therapies. So this is why I promote hyperbaric oxygen therapy, because you're not getting any kind of needles and you're not doing all the stupid Ozempic stuff. You're getting oxygen, and I that's when I promise kind of like meat and oxygen is the simple way to heal yourself. Or grounding. I mean, you just know about it. Like turning off
I
the
love
EMF.
grounding.
Like there's a
Yeah.
lot of different adjuncts, but a main foundation is what you put in your mouth. And I really want people to see how they can do or how they can benefit if they focus on their diet, eating quality food. Of course, yeah, don't eating seed oils and sugars, but for the American public, I'm not expecting them to go all full on carnivore. I'm like, just eat real food with one ingredient, make sure it's not processed, and you know what? Just do some of the basic principles like no sugar, no seed oils, and make it like in animal-based foods are the true healing elements of your body. And this is why carbohydrates are not an essential nutrient. You don't need it to live. But still, I don't have anything against fruits and vegetables, but just get it with one ingredient. So yeah, and don't eat the lettuce from Taco Bell if you're having that ongoing diarrhea that everybody's having or something. I forgot
That's
what's
right.
going on.
There's been so many things like that, about that on the internet recently, because all of us meat eaters are like,
Yeah.
we're not eating that lettuce. You talked about adjunct type of things you can do. And when I first started eating this way, I started keto and then went carnivore. But then, you go, your diet is good. And I agree with you. That's most of it. Then you
Yeah.
start learning about these other things, kind of like what you were talking about. I personally love grounding, and I love getting out in the sun, which I never
Yes.
used to do. Like, I feel like being out in the sun is super important. And a lot of people spend time hiding from the sun because they think it's going to
No.
cause
What is
cancer
it?
or things like that.
You got stupid like influencers like Brian Johnson, who now has like some autoimmune kind of like stomach eating disease or some crap. And I mean, he already looked like the worst beta male anyway, so he looked like he was transitioning to a sex change. But he's like very pasty. He's afraid to go out in the sun. I'm like, that's the stupidest thing you can ever kind of understand. So yeah, and if you actually look at the diet, and you'll see so many testimonials, especially with the entire carnivore community, that once they reduced seed oils and started eating animal-based fats, they weren't getting sunburned anymore. And yeah, exactly. Look, but I am Italian, but even when I was before I get carnivore, if I didn't go out in the sun for a couple months, I would get sunburn if I wasn't ready for it. But I embrace the sun, and that's like something that everybody naturally eats. So that's kind of like why I kind of enjoy Vegas, because it's always hot and sunny. Everybody's like, "Oh, it's like 115 degrees." I'm like, you know what? I can handle it. This is not too bad. So, and that's why I actually beat out the other candidates, because they're afraid to go out in the sun for like 30 minutes at a time, or they go there like an umbrella. I'm like, you look like so soft. We need strong men and women. This is a reason why I kind of emphasize that we have too many beta males, and this is why I trademarked LBS. I'm not sure if you saw that, but a couple of Republicans didn't like that. It's worse than TDS. So you know what TDS is, right? Trump derangement syndrome.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
So LBS is another syndrome. I'll allow someone in the comments to pick out, because I'm not going to put it on merchandise until after the election, because it's got a very inflammatory word. So
Okay.
it's a 5-letter word, not a 4-letter word. So since I'm an FCC attorney, I do entertainment law sometimes. I know what you can and cannot say during TV. They always prefer the 5-letter words. So that's what I'm going to start using during the campaign. I like offensive humor. Hopefully you got that too, right?
Yes.
Right,
Hey, I was just on with Bart K yesterday. I get it.
Oh, I love him. Yeah, Bart K
Right?
is amazing. No, that's amazing, because he is so intelligent and he's so witty. So if he's like having an argument with someone, he'll make it so humorous that like he's like serious, like, huh, he's making so good, but you can't stop laughing at it too, though.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so if elected, what is one practical policy change that could help shift us from treating chronic disease to actually preventing chronic disease? Because right now everyone's got some kind of chronic disease, right?
Yeah.
The rise of the insulin and all this is just leading people to having high blood pressure or prediabetes or type 2 diabetes, PCOS, like, which I know just got renamed, but that new name I can never remember. All of these things. Is there any kind of like a practical policy change that you're looking at that could help with this?
Yeah, well, let's just say right now there is a lot of agenda behind the school lunch programs, and this is why I see it problematic when they're taking meat out of schools. You have to realize that children can be severely obese and overweight, but they can still be malnourished.
Yes.
And that's what's happening. They're kind of just going to these very carb heavy diets. And they're having, in a lot of the states, they're doing meatless Mondays and they're doing meatless Fridays. They're trying to cut out meat. And then they're giving them all this plant-based, like Impossible Burger crap. I'm like, you're not nourishing. You're not getting like the true highest biological value protein that the body needs. So I don't emphasize that you have to only eat meat, but you have to have it as kind of like a main course of a meal to really, so focusing on the younger generation, but also the food that going to be serving in the hospitals, because beyond our youth, we got to focus on our elderly. There's a reason why the elderly are developing dementia at a faster rate. And there's like a plethora of clinical trials and studies showing that the high intake of carbohydrates and sugar accelerates dementia. You know what also accelerates dementia, Cristie?
Statins.
Well, yeah, a lot of medication. But here's another thing. So when I actually did the dissertation on the vaccine mandates, one thing I studied in great depth was the mask requirement.
Oh, okay.
Not only does not prevent COVID, but also there's a natural respiratory system that we have to basically carbon dioxide and oxygen, right? When you breathe out, carbon dioxide, you're supposed to intake oxygen. So what happens when you breathe in your own carbon dioxide 24/7? You're not getting the natural oxygen. Well, you get what's called carbon dioxide toxicity, otherwise known as hypercapnia. And what happens is you get a decreased amount of oxygen going to your brain. So they actually have plenty of studies in the nursing homes showing, they did a comparison of those. They actually did studies of all the elderly who are wearing the mask the longest, and the ones that wore the mask just for like a very short time, just like to walk in like this, because they shown that wearing a mask for more than 5 minutes at a time is so toxic to your body. Breathing the carbon, sometimes they say you have to do it like if you're in a hospital setting, but what happens is they accelerated the dementia at such a fast rate. In dementia, you forget everything. I'm a trust litigation attorney, so I studied dementia with all these kind of like geriatric like psychiatrists. So I always tell people, especially when you see people driving around in their own cars by themselves with a mask on, with latex gloves and shoe coverings, those are the same type of people who probably sleep in their own bed with their condom on. So but what we're seeing is, I always try to tell people, there's some things that you can do that can worsen your body. That's something that you should highly consider, because if you overwear a mask and you're not getting like natural oxygen, not only do you look dumber, you're becoming dumber. So there's some other things this is part of the agenda that's fed to the American public, because they don't want us healthy and strong and smart.
Mm-mm.
They want us dumb and weak and malnourished, because you know why? It's easier to control. It's easier to manipulate.
Yeah. I would be so happy if they would change our school lunches to Whole Foods, because I'm, like I said, boots on the ground in the classroom, and the kids eat. So for breakfast here, they get maybe a chocolate muffin with chocolate chips. They might get some cereal with some non-fat milk. They might get a honey bun. They might get a Pop-Tart. Those are some samples, right? For lunches, you will not believe the excitement in my students' eyes when it's not nacho day, because it's Doritos, like legit Doritos, and processed cheese sauce.
Yeah, they get excited about that, and
Mm-hmm.
it kind of like stimulates their hormones where they get very hungry on it too. So it kind of feeds. And this is why I tell people, like, especially they're like, you know what? If I have some meat, I'm kind of satisfied. I'm like, yeah, because fat is satiety. So
Yeah.
basically fat actually makes you satisfied with the food. And so that's why I tell people if they're really like if you actually go truly ketogenic with a high fat diet, and that's actually what the Paleo Medicina group kind of taught me. And this is
Mm-hmm.
a problem when you do too high of a protein diet and not enough quality fats. First of all, fat is necessary for your hormonal function, but your cognitive function too. So you're
Mm-hmm.
wondering why you're seeing all these beta males with because the testosterone levels of the average male is going so low nowadays, is
Yep.
because they promote like these very low fat diets, even if it's just high protein and still low carb. It's the fact that they're not getting enough fat in their diet. And someone who I prefer to eat if you get it from a quality source. Some of the fat that actually handle the best is raw fat from a quality source, like raw bone marrow and raw suet. If it's from a quality source, then that's what I prefer. But people also need to realize you have stomach acid for a reason. God
Mm.
gave you and I and dogs and cats stomach acid for a reason. Do you know what your average stomach acid is supposed to be at? Your pH levels?
It's like in the ones. I know it's more
Yeah.
than like a lion. Like we have like more acidity than a lion.
Yeah. Dr.
Yeah,
Shafi and I were talking about it too, but
yeah.
you're
I
you're
forget the
naturally
exact number, but
yeah, so what you're supposed to it's between like 1.5 to 2.1 for like canines, felines and dogs, maybe even like lesser, but that's actually a natural kind of like restrictive barrier to basically it's a natural antibacterial. So if you're actually getting some like meat, if you want to break it down, that's your hydrochloric acid is something. I don't recommend the lemon juice and betaine HCl because if you're very inflamed, that can be a little rough trying to drink straight lemon juice, like with your meats. But I always tell people get a quality sea salt because the chloride from a quality sea salt actually stimulates the hydrochloric acid in your stomach to actually help break down meat. So if you're ever having a full meal, you don't, first of all, don't be chugging water. You don't want to dilute your stomach acid. I say towards the end of the meal, start adding more salt. It's the craziest thing. But yeah, there's a lot of improper education and kind of propaganda they tell people. They tell you meat's bad. They tell you fat is bad. They tell you salt is bad. And all of a sudden, these are kind of like things that we've been having for 2.5 million years. And yeah, we got to go back to our apex predators.
yeah, 100% agree. Well, Chris, this has been a great conversation. I know that there's people watching today either live or some of people catching this on the replay. And they might feel like you once felt, which is like maybe frustrated, discouraged, believing you're out of options, right? Like when you're when they were like, we're going to take your whole
Yeah.
intestine, stuff like that. So, what would
Yeah.
you want to say directly to those people?
Well, one thing I want to say is that this is the reason why I really admire the carnivore community because I think it was probably the most welcoming community when I was really struggling. Because whenever you're really sick, it definitely affects your mental health. And that was probably one of the most depressing times, but it's most welcoming group. And even if a lot of other carnivores have never been like, if they didn't have the same kind of like, kind of situation me or getting like a procedure where they got their intestines cut open while they're fully awake, a lot of them had like struggled from chronic disease.
Yeah.
I will say one thing, just a blaze statement, because I have a lot of doctor clients, and this is something I have to agree with them. There are times where certain medications are become necessary for a last resort. Like if you have a serious sepsis and like you don't want to be basically, go into a fatality, a very short-term antibiotics, but when you're taking medications chronically, religiously, repetitively, this is where you kind of naturally beat up your immune system. So I really kind of that's why you see me trying to promote natural metabolic health. And there are other medical doctors who are political candidates or already incumbents. Why aren't they promoting metabolic health? And a lot of things are like, oh yeah, they're promoting better access to pharmaceuticals. I'm like, no, you're just giving them better access to drugs. That's like saying, hey, we're gonna give cocaine to the schools. So I really want people to focus on what they put in their food, but the biggest focus and my biggest concern is the younger generation. And this is why I'm doing fitness challenges with the Boy Scouts. This is why I am challenging the high school wrestlers to push up contests every week. And this is why, like, sometimes like kids that go to my own events, even though the Republicans, like, it's so unprofessional. He's doing push ups with the kids. He's a political candidate. I'm like, you know what? Get the stick out of your ass. We need to kind of work with the kids. We need to inspire them. So if you are over the age of, even 30 or 40, I always encourage like us to be an example for the younger generation. You have to inspire them. You can keep up with them because your age doesn't define you. You define your age. So that's kind of the last comment I want to make to the entire public watching. But yes, I'm always encourage everybody to reach out to me too.
Awesome. Hey, we have a last minute question from Walter. I think you know Walter. Chris, can you ask RFK Jr. about getting beef prices down?
Yeah, but this is going back to the American farmer situation. Actually,
Yes.
and so there is like a constant like battle and war. And I actually spoke with the HHS General Counsel. That was kind of like everything kind of falls out with politics, that would be kind of my option to be part of the General Counsel with HHS. There is a battle going with the other agencies such as the FDA, and of course I really wish the DOGE would probably spend a lot more time in the federal agencies than anything else to see where our money is going. But the biggest focus right now, and the best thing you can do, is if you get direct support from the American farmers. And this is why you see me promoting like a couple dozen different farms. Buy directly from the farmers. That's probably the best thing you can do to support them. Indirectly, if you buy from the meat farmers, it can reduce the production cost. But I'm trying to I follow Casey Parker with American Rancher Alliance. I could probably send some quote add-ons afterwards.
Yeah.
But she is building a coalition to make the production cost, because it's actually not the price of the cattle itself, it's the production cost which is driving up the meat prices. And if you're making the farmers go out of bankruptcy, yes, and restricting the amount of farmland that can be purchased by Bill Gates, because it creates an agricultural monopoly. So I'm not sure if you remember what Charlie Kirk was saying about like Vanguard and BlackRock taking over all like the residential, like, real estate. What does it do? They take over, it creates a monopoly where it drives up the prices, where it makes homes unaffordable. That is happening to our American farmers, because what they do is they buy out all the farmland, they lease it to the farmers, but it's completely unconscionable. They can't. The lease is going to be so expensive, they can't operate, and that is why we've had the highest bankruptcy filings since like 20. It started in the Biden administration. It was like in 2021, 2022. It's been downhill, and there's only so much you can do. So buy directly from the farmers.
Yeah, that's great advice. I find that it's more expensive, but I feel a lot better about it. And if you buy a half beef or a whole beef, you just need a big freezer, which I have invested in, and I love that. And then you've got meat for a long time. You know where it's coming from. You can shake their hand. You can see how those cows are living. And you know that there's none of that, cricket.
Yeah, and one more quick comment. If you buy from the area, you support the ARA, they actually have the coalition of farmers that they'll show you that this actually comes from the United States, so it's actually quality beef, because there is still a lot of meat that people will buy. It's not even coming from the United States, and you have no idea what happened to it.
Okay, well, Chris, thank you so much for giving of your time, for speaking with us today. We appreciate you so much. This has been great.
It's been a pleasure, Cristie, and everybody else can reach out to me afterwards. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks. Bye, everybody. See you next week.